tell us something about the mind-brain relationship?
Yes. It's very interesting to know that Martinez had a light experience, or an experience of enhanced consciousness, which we call now a near-death experience. It's an identical experience. He had all the classical transformation as well as people with a near-death experience. He had an enhanced intuitive sensitivity. He had contact with the higher dimensions always. He is open, what we call. So he had contact with the enhanced consciousness, and he knew as well as people within the death experience, and also what we tell now is that consciousness is always everywhere, beyond time, beyond space, inside and outside our body. And our body and our brain just functions as interface of transceiver. It receives information from consciousness, and the body and the brain sends information from body and senses to consciousness. So consciousness is not produced by the brain nor by the body, but it has an interface function, like Martinez has said as well. And so consciousness has no beginning and no end, it's always there.
In your book you talk about what you call non-local or endless consciousness. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is that people who have a near-death experience can relive their whole past from early childhood, from moment of birth, sometimes even before birth. And they are connected with everything, all memories, and what they have thought and done and said. And when they are in a death experience, which can take 2 or 3 minutes, they can talk for hours to weeks about what happened, because they say everything was there simultaneously at the same moment. The moment I saw my whole life at the same moment. When I focused to something, I would be there. So, and you can also have future events, a preview or flash forward. So in this consciousness people experience, the past and the future is available all at the same moment. So there is a connectedness, or what they call an entanglement, where everything what happens in the past and in the future. And it is beyond time and beyond space, which is, from the quantum physics, we call that non-locality, which is a connection, an interconnectedness without time and without space. Everything was there. And that's what I call it a non-local consciousness.
Do near-death experiences give us an indication of what happens to a person's consciousness when that person is confirmed dead? Can we see near-death experiences as a form of window to the afterlife, as some claim?
Yeah, I never use the word afterlife. What I say is that there's a continuity of consciousness when the body dies. So death is the end of our physical aspects, it's the end of our body. But it's not the end of our consciousness. So there's a continuity of consciousness, and we know it from all people who had a near-death experience. But we know it also from people where you have the after-death communication, that you are in contact with the deceased relatives in the first days, weeks or months after they die. They can meet them, they can see them, they communicate with them, they can feel them. Which is only possible as the consciousness must be still somewhere.
When people tell you about their near-death experiences, are their experiences as real as any physical experience?
Oh no, much more real. They always say near-death experience is more real than what I know here in my physical body when I look around. What I see here around me is like an illusion. And my near-death experience, that's real. This is my home, this is where I come from, this is the only reality there is.
Another aspect of the world picture of Martinez is reincarnation, rebirth in a physical organism. Can studies of near-death experiences tell us anything about the phenomenon of reincarnation?
Well, first you should ask yourself, what is reincarnation and what reincarnates? I don't know. I can just say that there's a continuity of consciousness. And I know that people can experience, and that's what we call past life experiences. When you die and there is a continuity of consciousness, what exactly of who you are will continue? And the next question is, what will come back? So the different opinions, like the anthroposophy, like Rudolf Steiner, or the Hindus say you come back as the person you are. I don't believe that. I believe that you awaken consciousness, the personality you are now, your ego is just a part of a higher self with capital. And this higher self, which is a light being, sends different aspects back to your new life, to your body, to learn other aspects you didn't learn in this life. So I believe in the possibility of reincarnation. I don't know exactly what comes back, what part of it comes back, and I don't know exactly when people talk about past life, if it was their life, or they are connected with the consciousness of someone who lived. So because you're in the other dimension, everything is connected.
Other near-death experiences that involve the experience of past lives.
That's extremely rare.
Extremely
rare. So I've heard some of them. Usually you don't relive your past lives. But we know a lot of, Ian Stevenson and now Jim Tucker have studied a lot of cases, more than 3,000 cases of reincarnation where children spontaneously start to talk about a past life between the age of 3 and 5. And a lot of it is very, very well documented. And even with biological science. And usually these spontaneous reincarnation stories are based on a sudden traumatic death in the past life. So they were killed or murdered or soldiers, whatever. And sometimes even biological markers at birth. So let's just spot here and here where the bullet came on, things here, marks are there. So these kind of studies makes it highly possible that reincarnation is real. But Ian Stevenson have said there is no proof, but it is beyond reasonable doubt that there is reincarnation.
For more than 30 years, you've studied near-death experiences. Hundreds of patients have shared their stories with you. Has this had an impact on your own life, on how you view death, on your values and so on?
Totally changed. But it took some time, let's say, before I could accept that the brain doesn't produce consciousness. It takes a lot of time as well, because it's a totally different way of thinking. But when you talk to so many people with a near-death, I've talked to more than 1,000, I've got thousands of emails from all over the world who share their NDE with me. I'm now convinced that consciousness is non-local and the brain doesn't produce, but it facilitates to experience consciousness. It's not a product of consciousness. The brain doesn't produce consciousness. And also, of course, our ideas are life and death change, because I'm now quite sure that there's a continuity of consciousness. And the way you live, how you treat other people, how you treat animals, how you treat nature, climate change, your food, all things change as well. So we eat biological dynamic food based on anthroposophy, very healthy food as well. We are both about vegetarian. My wife more strict than I, but I don't eat meat anymore. Sometimes fish, but my wife always says, every creature that have eyes, I won't eat. So, yes.
Are you afraid of dying? Have this fear disappeared?
I'm curious. I'm curious.
If you were to choose one or two stories that made a particular impression on you, which would they be?
Yeah. I think the most impressive stories are when you can corroborate veridical perceptions during out-of-body experience in an NDE. Because that's an objective proof that people were really out of their body. And you can corroborate when people tell something they saw about a resuscitation, about details, and you ask doctors and nurses and family members if it happened or when it happened, then you can prove that this out-of-body experience happened during a moment of deep unconsciousness. And one of the most impressive stories is for a man of 44 years old who was found in a meadow unconscious. And people started to do some chest compression, but not really adequate CPR, resuscitation. And after 30 minutes, the man was brought into the coronary care unit by ambulance. They've tried to give him some defibrillation without any result. So when he came into a hospital, he was cold, already blue, no breathing, no heartbeat, no blood pressure. His pupils didn't react to light. So it was kind of hopeless, man. And the first thing the nurses did is to try to intubate the patient, to give him more oxygen. And he found out that he has dentures in him. So he took out his dentures and put them somewhere on the crash cart, on the slider underneath. And it took 1.5 hours before they had blood pressure and heartbeat again. But he was still unconscious, he was in coma, was intubated, had artificial breathing. So they transferred him into the intensive care unit for artificial respiration for 1 week. He was another 1 week in coma. And when he regained consciousness, he was referred to the cardiac ward again. So after 1 week in coma, he came back on the cardiac ward, and there, when he was just there, a nurse came in for medication. And he saw the nurse and said, "You know where my dentures are." And you could, and the nurse was so surprised. He said, "You were there." I took my denture, put it, was car with all those bottles on it, and there was a sliding, and there you put my teeth. And he could describe the small resuscitation room where he came in coma and left in coma. We could describe it exactly from above, also what happens behind the curtain, etc. You could describe the appearances from the nurses and doctors who were busy with resuscitation. And that's a kind of proof that he really had perception in the moment. There was no heartbeat. He was deeply unconscious. And we cannot explain it with our current materialist paradigm, because according to this materialist paradigm, it would be impossible to have any conscious experience at all. There would be no subjective experience at all, but consciousness would be a product of brain function.
What is your vision and hope for the future of science?
Well, the future of science is that we have to change the definition of science, because nowadays there is no subjective experience included. So the first person recount, it's just called an anecdote. But essential of who we are is what we feel and what we think. And we cannot prove, nor objectify, nor measure, nor reproduce, not falsify the content of our consciousness. What you feel and think, you cannot prove. So we have to include subjective experience. It's what we call an all-inclusive science, which includes subjective experience. And that's what we call now the post-materialist science. So it is an expanding of science which includes subjective experiences. And there's now worldwide more and more scientists are open for this new science, especially because of the study of consciousness for the last 20 years, so more and more important. But the other side, there's still a lot of neuroscientists who are looking somewhere in the brain if they could find something. They will never find the consciousness in the brain.
Why is research on near-death experiences important for us today as individuals, but also important for society as a whole?
I will say that our ideas about death define how we live our life. As long as we think that death is the end of everything who we are, we will give our energy towards a temporary materialistic society. So it's all about money, big cars, beautiful body, a lot of money, power, big houses, etc. But when you know that there is continuity of consciousness, you will give all your effort to change yourself, to have empathy and compassion towards others and towards nature. We destroy nature, we destroy planet Earth now these days. And when you know that everything you do to others and to nature will ultimately come back to you, the positive and negative aspects, you will change your life as well. So our ideas, our death define how we live our life.